Hey guys, happy Monday. I hope you had a great weekend. Hope you had a chance to get out in the snow some on Saturday. We are starting Bend 2 today, so this is session 11. Mr. Todd can pause this if he'd like, or if you want him to, so that you can finish getting the session, the date, and the learning target written down. Alright, so as we move into the second bend of the unit, we're going to change topics. Still going to be argument, reading, and writing, but the topic has changed from the simulated violence in games to something that's a little bit more serious and maybe a little bit more complicated. If you remember, we watched a podcast with Ishmael Bea earlier this unit. If you can recall, he talked about being a child soldier. At a pretty young age, he was taken as a child soldier, and then he was rescued and adopted and moved to the U.S. We are going to be talking this bend of the unit, about whether or not kids who are used as child soldiers should be held accountable for their actions, or whether child soldiers should be granted amnesty. People who commit war crimes are often charged with those crimes, and if found guilty, can serve all sorts of consequences. And so the argument that you're going to be completing or debating and writing about is whether or not child soldiers should be given amnesty. Amnesty is an official pardon or forgiveness for any war crimes that they committed. So I'm going to let you watch an interview with Ishmael Bea. It was recorded well before the podcast that we watched. It was not long after he graduated from college that he did this interview with Katie Couric. And as you're listening to him talk about his experiences, if you will kind of keep in the back of your mind the question of whether or not these kids should be held accountable for the things that they do as child soldiers, or whether or not they should be forgiven and granted amnesty, given a pardon for any war crimes that they commit.
The trial of former Liberian President Charles Taylor began today in The Hague, and for the first time, prosecutors have made the recruitment of children under 15 in order to fight a war crime. CBS News spoke to one of the child soldiers about fighting in one of West Africa's most brutal wars.
When the war started and it came to my part of the country in Sierra Leone, the south, and I started running from it, and between 12 and 13 I had seen so much, and I had lost my immediate family. Mother, father, and two brothers were killed, and I was with a group of other kids, and naturally we thought if we went to a military base we would be protected, but that turned out not to be the case, and we were forcefully recruited in this army. We were not given a choice. If we left, we were basically going to be killed by the rebels, who would consider us the enemy, and then joining was not to our best interest, but it was a way to stay alive in a way. But then after the initial coercion and the initial use of drugs, this became our reality. We lost ourselves completely in this war, that it became the only thing we knew, and that was our life. As time goes on, you become addicted to the drugs themselves, that you have to find them to take them yourself. And in the beginning, the killings were also very difficult to do, but as time goes on, you've lost yourself completely. It becomes your life, and you have to do it to stay alive. The commander begins to look like your father figure. The lieutenants, the sergeants begin to look like older brothers that you've lost, and family members you don't have anymore. So you develop a very strong sense of attachment to these groups, and in this time, this is the only kind of structure that is functioning in any kind of way. So young people develop a strong attachment to them. You become loyal. You want to please them, just as you want to please your elders. With the drugs and trauma, you develop this sense of invisibility, that you're now a combatant, you're part of something, you're not running away from this war anymore. You can bring this madness to people now, they will not bring it to you. So all these kinds of stuff, you believe that they have given you this kind of power. when I would write about certain instances that I witnessed, or during this time there were exhibition killings that we looked at, we participated in, and we kind of cheered people on to do certain things. And when I would think about those things, it would bring a very strong discomfort within my own body, within my being. And I think because of these things, I came to realize that the only reason that a child can function in this particular world, if you lose yourself completely, when your faculties are not in place, if you are fully functioning, you're able to exhibit those human emotions, you cannot live in that world. There are all kinds of drugs, ranging from your common marijuana to amphetamines that I don't know the names of, to cocaine and what is called brown, which could be a mixture of cocaine and gunpowder, heroin and gunpowder. And all these things made you numb. And also watching like the war films and things, like develop a sense of invisibility that you cannot die and things like that. But in my group there wasn't such a kind of thing, but there was more a belief that the commanders had some sort of juju. They had some sort of magical power, that so when they led you to battle, or when they told you to go somewhere, that they were protecting you through some sort of magical power they had. Let's go. Again, this is one of the reasons why children are recruited. You cannot have adults to believe that kind of stuff. You drag them into this kind of madness, but you can have kids believe this. But regaining yourself, your humanity, it is a very, it's possible, but it's a very difficult process. It's not as quick as some people think it is. It took me 8 months just to regain myself and continue that process of healing. For some people it will take longer. For each child it's different. If I went to the bathroom to take a shower or to open a tap water, all I could see is blood pouring out of the thing until I look at it continuously before I could see water. If I tried to sleep, I would dream of certain things and I would wake up and big fights. I had to withdraw from the drugs. I had to face the memories. It took people who were selflessly compassionate and they were patient and they persevered with us. It required people who were willing to look at us as children, regardless of what our lives had been, and that helped us. That rekindled our own humanity. It made us know that there was more to our lives than what we had come to believe. And also, we had lost the faith in human beings, the trust adults especially, so that also had to be regained. I don't think I am necessarily angry in the sense that I would want revenge from them or anything, because I've come to know that only brings about more suffering. But I think people who orchestrated this and who took so many lives in childhood should be held accountable. I think, because this sets an example that you cannot do that to children anywhere. I love Sierra Leone regardless of what happened there. I was back there last year, and it's my home. I think one of the reasons I gained the strength within me to survive that war, to continue living, is based on things that I learned from my early childhood in that tradition, that culture. And it's a beautiful place. People have a remarkable resilience and very hopeful people, kind and generous, and I would like to live there. The simplicity of life there I can't find anywhere else, and which is why I hope that whoever really comes in power next in Sierra Leone can really do something for the people, so that we can have that country back, because it's very dear to some of us, even though we've suffered there quite a lot.
Okay, so as you can see already, this is a pretty complicated topic. On one hand, it's easy to say, no, of course, these kids shouldn't be held accountable. They were drugged, they were manipulated. But at the same time, like Ishmael Bey was saying, they learned to believe that what they were doing was okay, and they looked up to these men, these leaders, as father figures. And they even got to the point where they would cheer and be excited for the exhibition killings, to see their brothers, their friends, killing innocent people. They would get excited for that, and so it's very, very intense, very complicated to think about whether or not these kids should be given forgiveness, have their slates wiped clean, or should they be held accountable for some of the the awful things that they did. This is going to be a kind of a longer process in doing some research. With any topic that's this complicated and this intense, you have to make sure you give yourself time to really gather as much information as you can before you start forming an opinion. So I'm not going to ask you to do a whole lot of citing one way or the other at first. I want you to gather as much information as you can, making sure you can be as fair as you can before you start trying to form your opinion. Today, you're going to start the research process. The very first thing I want you to read is an article in Newsy LA, and it is about child soldiers. So if you'll go to Newsy LA and read the article, take the quiz, and answer the writing prompt. Then when you get finished with that, there are some more articles in colored folders at the front of the room. Try to read at least one more article today. They are yours to keep, but just take one at a time, please. Highlight, annotate, whatever you want to do, and of course, take notes. Even with the Newsy LA article, take notes. Have that notebook open. Remember what you know about researching two sides of an argument. Think about those return to pages that we did in the first bend of the unit. Track information that you're gathering on both sides. Make sure you're organizing your information, you're keeping track of your sources. So for every article that you read, make sure you write down its title, and just start the information gathering process today. I will check your return to pages in your notebook tomorrow. Again, like I said, make sure you do some note taking as you read that first article in Newsy LA as well. Okay? For homework, I do want you to start doing just a little bit of thinking, processing, and writing, jotting about your initial reactions to this idea of child soldiers and whether or not they should be charged with war crimes or be granted amnesty. I don't want you to fall necessarily on a solid opinion yet, but just start processing all the things that you've read. The more you read, the more shocked you may be at some of the information that you find. It's an intense, complicated, complex issue, and so I want us to take the time to really think about our opinions before we form them. So I'll check for this writing in your notebook tomorrow as well. Okay? I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great afternoon.